Welcome back to the channel. On October 11th, the Tulloch Institute in Perth witnessed Fair City Wrestling's annual Fair City Rumble, a match that allows 30 competitors to vie for the literal game-changing prize on offer, FCW's Game Changer briefcase, which allows the holder to cash in for an FCW Heavyweight Championship match at any time of their choosing. The winner of this year's Fair City Rumble was Retro Randy Valentine. He is now obviously the holder of that briefcase and can cash in for a FCW Heavyweight Championship match at any time of his choosing. He did say though recently in a promo that he will not be like a thief in the night, and that certainly the reigning and current, as I'm recording this, FCW Heavyweight Champion, infamous Ian Ambrose, will certainly see him coming when he decides to do so. This brings me to the reason why I'm actually making this video. And the reason is because these two gentlemen involved in this potential upcoming match for the FCW Fair City Wrestling Heavyweight Championship are not unknown to me. I'm very familiar with both of these gentlemen, and I know that some people may not be too familiar with their history and who exactly they are. You do get a lot of just general kind of wrestling fans attending shows, and I've said it before, FCW shows are really popular. So this is certainly a situation, especially knowing these two gentlemen. I'm a long time, and I've said this many times, I'm a very long-term follower and attender of live pro wrestling shows in the Tayside area. So I've seen these two gentlemen wrestle for a number of years, and so I thought, why not sit and talk about this, because as a long-term fan, knowing those, having witnessed a lot of matches from both of these individuals, for me personally, the prospect of this potential match happening is very exciting. So let's talk about these two individuals. Let's first of all talk about the challenger, Retro Randy Valentine. Like I said, he is no stranger to me. He has been around the Scottish wrestling scene for many years. In fact, around the UK scene, he had a little bit of training in England, and he has been a familiar face in Dundee, the east coast of Scotland, and even into Edinburgh. Certainly, I watched him for a number of years. This is all way before Fair City Wrestling came into existence, and another promotion that I used to go to. And there, Randy was a very familiar face to everybody. Wrestled continuously on another company. Was always on their shows. He is in fact a former heavyweight champion. Although saying that, he was never really around the championship scene. For some reason, I don't think he seemed to want to go down that route. He certainly didn't seem to actually be wanting to challenge for championships all of the time. Saying that though, it wasn't as if he was in the background, because actually during many years that I witnessed him wrestle, he was actually always around very important matches, whether he was with a Mega Pal, a Welsh Dynasty, or perhaps jumping and diving off of the top of the steel cage. He was always involved in some pretty important main events and big matches on the big shows. So he was always around. He was certainly someone to keep an eye on. He was then known as Ravishing Randy Valentine, and at that time, thankfully he's changed, but he wasn't a very nice person, let's say. He disagreed with the fans, hated them to a degree, would mock them continuously. All types of typical, heelish kind of behaviour, and really didn't care what the fans thought of him, and was out for himself and his friends at different points, depending on who he was aligning himself with. So certainly he was a very noticeable guy. He wasn't around the championship scene very much, was around some very important championship situations, was an integral part of many of those situations, but certainly was a very familiar face, very well known and accomplished wrestler as well. So again, especially in and around Dundee, the Tayside wrestling scene for many years. That was until about 2014, when a promotion that's formed, that I'm sure some people may have heard their name by now. They're getting a lot of publicity recently with the management changes, but it was, of course, Discovery Wrestling. When Discovery Wrestling was founded in 2014, Randy had the opportunity and took advantage of it to kind of hang up his boots to a degree, and he went off to join Discovery Wrestling doing commentary, and I'm sure other duties with his experience. I'm sure he was doing other duties as well, but mainly certainly commentating and helping out running Discovery Wrestling. So he went off and did that, so he really disappeared from the east coast of Scotland. Fast forward then to the Fair City Rumble of 2022, and Randy Valentine ended up being a surprise entrant. Now, we'd heard the rumblings of changes of management and stuff like that of Discovery Wrestling. I did follow that promotion for the first couple of years. I went to their shows, but things in life happened and we couldn't get through to Edinburgh on a regular basis. I know there's still probably people that go through and watch their shows and stuff like that. There was never any, it's Discovery Wrestling, it's poo kind of them. That was absolutely never the case with the East Coast fans. But again, just like happened, literal things happened and we couldn't go through really. So we kind of fell out of going. And then when Randy made that surprise entrance, I have to say, he wasn't expected. I didn't really expect, to be honest, to be seeing Randy Valentine in a ring again in this area. But when he entered the Tulloch Institute in Perth for that Fair City Rumble in 2022, it was a major surprise. And actually, it's cut a long kind of story short. Since he's returned for these last 2 years, Retro Randy, as he's now known, and thankfully again, much nicer person, who's really been accepted by the fans, has had a tremendous amount of success over these past 2 years. Had some tremendous matches. I've witnessed some of them live. Difficult to get to some shows now, but certainly I've watched a lot of his matches, and he's had tremendous success and had some fantastically entertaining matches, which actually you can see many of the past events on Fair City Wrestling's YouTube channel. If you go on there, you can watch. I'm sure probably the Fair City Rumble from 2022 is probably up there, and there's lots of other matches. And so Randy's actually has some really good matches, including with his tag team partner, Filthy Ryan Root. And in fact, fairly recently, they came off a quite successful and shorter probably than they would have liked run as the Fair City Wrestling Tag Team Champions. Their tag team is known as Retro Filth, and they're a really good tag team, very entertaining, and they had a decent run. Again, probably a little bit shorter than they would like, but certainly Randy has had the success. And again, this brings us to this year's Fair City Rumble, where he was able to successfully win that match, eliminating Luke Matthews at in the last gasps of that match to win. And in fact, what really helped Randy win that match was what happened at Ardler Mania. And I say that separately because, ironically, Fair City Wrestling has just within the past couple of days as I record this, uploaded the rest of Ardler Mania Part 2 onto, again, their YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch some excellent matches that took place recently at the Ardler Complex here in Dundee. And Randy on that event won the over-the-top gauntlet match so that he could choose his number to enter that Fair City Rumble. And he ended up actually not choosing the easy route, but chose quite a hard route in choosing number 15 for his entrance number for the Fair City Rumble. So I'm genuinely looking forward to watching when it is released eventually, the footage again on the YouTube channel of Fair City Wrestling's Fair City Rumble 2024 to see how he managed to go from 15 to the winning spot, see how he managed it, and watch the rest of the matches on that night. I wasn't able to make that event, unfortunately, due to illness, but I really look forward to seeing the matches and seeing the Rumble itself. In a while, we've just uploaded Adler Mania Part 2 second half, so and some excellent matches there, so it will be coming in the next several weeks at least, when they are able to do whatever they need to do and obviously have time for let people watch Adler Mania. Then I'm sure they will get to the event. I think there was maybe an event in between, but certainly once they get to the Rumble, then I'm looking forward to sitting and watching it. So Randy chose number 15, and I kind of joked on Facebook that this would be his ultimate challenge because he is a bit 80s inspired. So I kind of made a joke about him be his ultimate challenge, but he rose to that challenge, and again he is now the holder of that Game Changer briefcase, which again, as I've talked about, I've kind of knew Randy for years, watched so much of his in-ring career, and so I'm really interested in him having this potential match, as I said, against infamous Ian Ambrose, who again at the time of recording this is the Fair City Wrestling heavyweight champion. Let's talk about the reigning, potentially defending Fair City Wrestling heavyweight champion, infamous Ian Ambrose. Again, another one who I have followed, and in fact I've been watching local shows for around about 15 years, which I think it must be around about that time that Ian has actually been wrestling for. Ian's another kind of underrated Scottish talent who, just due to some of the companies and people he chose to work for in terms of really where the fan base was for him and what was happening, he has unfortunately been kind of ignored, which is kind of the story somewhat of some, at least, of the wrestlers on the east coast of Scotland. Because we're east coast, some opportunities don't come their way, and Ian is unfortunately one of those who have had not had the opportunities that he maybe should have had. And so I followed Ian's career again from before Fair City Wrestling was formed, and Ian, ironically I would say, because it's weird, because one of the reasons why I'm talking about this situation is that you can't kind of write this stuff. The way that it has happened, that there was a generational kind of shift, or it's only shift in personnel, around about 2013, 2014, when likes of Discovery Wrestling was formed. And Ian already at that time was establishing himself from being a young wrestler, all night Ian Ambrose. Eventually, through the years, he would eventually become the hashtag scumbag, and now the infamous Ian Ambrose, the true infamous one. Ian was already working hard to establish himself and be a future champion, literally in some cases when they're talking about championships he held, and working his way up the ladder, as they talk about, in his wrestling career. And so Ian was solidifying himself as a main event guy, an up and coming main event guy. And around about that time, and I would say especially from about 2013, 2014 on, was really when Ian kicked it into overdrive and truly started developing into the wrestler and the man that we know he is today. Coming into his own in terms of the skills in the ring, and obviously making the connection with the fans. There is I'm not going to. I always say this. There are always people that I could mention. There are always various, you know, people that I could talk about in terms of making connection with the fans on the East Coast, particular wrestlers and different promotion stuff that fans gravitate to, and Ian is certainly one of them. And some of the long-term fans and some people that go to Fair City Wrestling will tell you that Ian's genuinely one of the most popular, one of the favourites amongst the crowd. Again, there are many others, and I'm not trying to minimise anybody's contribution because there's lots of great talent in Fair City Wrestling, whether they be established veterans like Ian or Ewan Mackey or any other people, through to the slightly more established people, Spike and the Duke and Asher and the younger talent as well that are coming through, the Paterskis and Valags and Edens and a lot of the young talent that's coming through in Fair City Wrestling. There's a tremendous deal with. But over the years, even again before Fair City Wrestling, Ian firmly became one of the fan favourites, and that connection he has with the fans is pretty special. I'm also just going to say this, and I know some people may not like me saying this, but it's genuinely true. Before Fair City Wrestling was formed, which was in 2019, they made their debut, they've just celebrated their 5th anniversary. It's true to say that wrestling in Tayside was in a little bit of a dark period. And I'm glad that Fair City Wrestling came along, because honestly, who knows what the state of affairs would be if Fair City Wrestling hadn't come in. I think we would have lost a lot of talent that you see on some of their shows and shows around Scotland. And it was truly a dark period. And part of that was that the fans kept going to shows, at least at one point, for a good while. We kept going to shows to see people like Ian Ambrose. And Ian Ambrose and others would continue to appear on shows because they wanted to wrestle. And of course they wanted to see the fans. They wanted to wrestle for the fans, to put it simply. And so Ian was one of those guys who kept a lot of fans coming through that kind of darker period. And until again, even in terms of Fair City Wrestling, let's get back to the company we're talking about. When Fair City Wrestling were formed, Ian was actually on the very first show. And he has become, it's an over cliche term that I've seen used lately, but he's genuinely become one of the mainstays of the promotion over the past 5 years. An exceptional talent, a well-respected veteran within the ranks of FCW, and absolutely one of the top wrestlers that they have on the roster. Again, no offence to anybody else, but Ian is in the position that he is in now as two-time now FCW Heavyweight Champion for a reason. Saying that as well, one thing that I think people want to keep in mind in this situation that I'm talking about is that actually Ian's journey to the current FCW Championship reign that he is having may have came a little bit easier than he thought it would. Ian has literally just a couple of months ago now recovered and returned from a very serious knee injury, if it's even, to be honest, 100%. I have knowledge of that. He is not maybe quite 100%, but he suffered a legitimate knee injury during the match about 9 months ago, and it has kept him on the shelf for that period. And so Ian, though he was pushing towards a potential FCW championship match at the time he was injured, he came back and faced Alexander Darwin McCallum at Adler Mania for the vacant FCW Heavyweight Championship. So he took on ADM. That wasn't an easy match at all. And Ian and ADM was selected as the two gentlemen to be in that match by FCW. So I'm sure that even though again it wasn't an easy match to go through and to win, of course, we all know that ADM is very established around Scotland. I think we're only really starting. Personally, I've only seen a little bit of him, but I think we're only really starting to see him in Fair City Wrestling. I think he can certainly make his mark within the company if he so wishes, and I think he does. And I think that's what we're going to maybe see over the next couple of years. But Ian was able to chart his path to an FCW championship match a little bit easier. I think he thought, as we all did, he'd have to start again maybe from the bottom, battle his way through up to contention for an FCW championship match, and then see who he's facing, who's the champion at the time. So maybe the path came a little bit easier than Ian and us and the fans expected. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we will see. Only time will tell, which is another overused cliche, but it's genuinely the truth. But I'm really excited to have Ian back, to have infamous Ian Ambrose once again back in the ranks of FCW, back on the roster, in the active roster. Because obviously he wasn't away from the company, but he's now back, cleared from injury, back wrestling, obviously the FCW heavyweight champion. So that is great to see, and obviously considering the situation, this game changer briefcase that Retro Randy Valentine has is potentially only one of many targets that Ian has on his back. As I said throughout this video, I'm making this video because this is a potential match that is coming up. And again, for a long-term fan as myself, who has followed Retro Randy Valentine as we now know him, for the last couple of years he'd been Retro Randy Valentine. Again, he was Ravishing Randy Valentine before, but now he's Retro Randy Valentine. Having him holding that game changer briefcase, being able to cash in at any time for an FCW heavyweight championship match against infamous Ian Ambrose. Two veterans of the Scottish scene, two veterans of the Tayside wrestling scene, two guys, again, I've probably known for years. I am really excited to see this potential match. Obviously, it depends on many things. Who's holding the FCW Heavyweight Championship? Ian, as a fighting champion, already had one championship defence. At least the Brad Evans, I believe it was. There are other many targets on Ian's back. Many challengers who want a piece of the pie in terms of Fair City Wrestling, that heavyweight championship. So Randy has the game changer briefcase. I don't see him putting it on the line. I know he's concentrating right now. I think it's November 8th is their next show, where Randy will actually try and settle things with Luke Matthews, who again he eliminated last to win that Fair City Rumble. Luke is obviously not happy with the situation, coming so close, so very close to winning the Fair City Rumble, but it wasn't enough. They've still got their score to settle if they can settle it, which one match might not do it. But that just having the potential of Retro Randy Valentine versus infamous Ian Ambrose, as a long-term fan, as someone who's kind of followed those two gentlemen for many years, I'm really personally very excited about seeing this match. I don't know really how much interaction they've had before. I don't know how many matches, if any, that they've really had together or maybe against each other. More than likely years ago. I don't think they really wrestled too much against. Again, Randy left in about 2014 to go to Discovery Wrestling, and that's when really the years where Ian really established himself and came through the ranks to be the main eventer that he is today. So again, I'm really excited to see this potential match. I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to be the match of the year and the Dave Meltzers of the world are going to go crazy over it and give it multiple 5 stars or anything. But I think for me and other fans, and I think even for Fair City Wrestling, this will be an event. If this match ends up happening, then I think it's going to be an event. And I know that, again, Randy has talked on the Scottish Wrestling Network. He did a podcast in July with Billy Strachan, which is an excellent listen. I'll have to go back and listen to it again. I'm not sure when the last time Ian did any kind of podcast. I'll have to look back in their archives to see whether they've spoken to him and try and see, because I'm sure he's done a couple, but certainly these two gentlemen potentially facing off each other against each other at an FCW event. I'm really excited to see. Again, it's not going to be the match of the year candidate, but it's going to be an event. When and if this match happens, it's going to be really exciting. Hopefully, I'll be able to buy my ticket, so I'll try and make sure that I'm there. And who knows, when Randy said that Ian will see him coming when he does, or will he? We never know what's going to happen in professional wrestling. Maybe Ian will lay down a challenge to Randy to settle it. I don't know. We never know what's going to happen in Fair City Wrestling and pro wrestling as a whole. So it's going to be really exciting to see. But genuinely, I think my final thought is that having these two guys, two experienced veterans of Scottish wrestling, vying for the FCW Heavyweight Championship, again, it's really an exciting thing. It shows that they're really, really, they really want that championship. They really think a lot of it, and it is, again, Fair City Wrestling is 5 years old. Few notable names have held that title and the various championships within Fair City Wrestling. So for them to see that they absolutely value this championship is great to see as well. And again, I'm sure that there are many other Fair City wrestlers and maybe wrestlers around the UK and further abroad. We've seen a couple of European guests in FCW. I'm sure there are many people who would like to challenge for the FCW Heavyweight Championship as well. So I'm really genuinely looking forward to it. It is going to be an event if and when this match eventually happens.